Well, welcome all. Having just come back from 5 days out in the bush, most of that was to do with just getting out from town and just enjoying a bit of peace and quiet out in the bush. So I'm working on a video that I took during that trip. It's fairly extensive, so I'm going to take a fair time to get it actually edited and so forth, but it's probably more of a travel log rather than a hardcore bush four-wheel drive trip, given the nature of the tracks that we encountered. But that's how it happens when you go out there. The other aspect that I wanted to cover there was doing some testing of some gear, and I managed to do a little bit of it, not everything, but I think I only just left out one item that I was going to do some sort of a mini review or whatever of it, but didn't get around to it. The main things were the Wireless Go 2 unit and the Flycam Galaxy vest. Some changes that I've done to the balancing system on that. First off, the Rode Wireless Go worked brilliantly. One of the tests that I did with it was to see how it would work in distance-wise. I think that's one of the important things that a lot of people are worried about. The quality of the audio and so on is pretty much on par with the original Go. I don't think there's anything that really needs to be done too much on that. It has some features in there that are quite good for the ability to adjust things, and I'm hoping that they will bring out an Android app for it rather than just having Windows, because when you go out and about like that, very few people carry a Windows machine or Windows capable tablet or whatever. So one of the things that I did was with the Wireless Go 2 was to see how it would work in sort of a different situation to what a lot of people test. A lot of people just put their Wireless Go receiver on the camera, walk away and see how far it goes before it starts losing signal. I did something different. I put a unit, the receiver in the car. I just put it on the dash on top of my tablet, as you can sort of just see in the picture there. And then I gave my travelling companion a Wireless Go transmitter, and I had one of mine own as well. So I was just seeing how the two would react and what sort of signal you get, signal strength on the receiver. And we were sitting in the car, so I was in the front, he was in the back, and we were driving. And he was probably about 100 to 175 metres behind me, so he said, a fair distance anyway, and the reception was brilliant. Every time that we were in view of each other, there was no problems whatsoever. There was no interference from the metal in the cars or the gear in the cars. It worked really, really well. The only time the signal dropped out was, I don't think this dog can settle. The only time it really dropped out was when I went over a hillock or a ridge line and just simply lost line of sight. But it worked perfectly as far as that's concerned. So I was really impressed with the fact that in a situation like that, which is fairly unusual, but I wanted to do it because if we were going to do river crossings and so on, then I wanted to have some sort of dialogue going between us from the car to me with the camera outside, and sort of use it in that sort of fashion when we go bush. Unfortunately, we didn't get any river crossings that were of any note, so that didn't occur, but I was very happy with the small tests that I did. And intermittently I used the Go 1 and the Go 2, and really they're pretty much the same. So I could definitely recommend the Wireless Go 2. It's very flexible. I like the idea of being able to have two transmitters and one receiver. It really gives you a lot of flexibility, and hopefully this coming weekend I can make use of that, but we'll see what happens. The other thing that I did was testing the Flycam Galaxy vest, Gabang, and I'll put up a video of that following this little short discussion. What I've done is I've adjusted the tension levels of the main arm, which is this one which connects to your body, and the one on the which holds the camera, and I've made this one at the lowest setting that I can possibly put it to with the 5 to 10 kilo springs, and this one is probably somewhere about midway. So it's quite a bit looser than what it was, and in the conditions that I was walking in, very rough, hilly, rocky and so on, I already sort of gave it a complete test in the conditions that most people won't be doing or using this sort of setup with, but it seemed to work a lot better. There's a little bit of bobbing still going on, so I think that there's some adjustment required here. I may even have to put this forward arm, put in the lighter weight springs that come with it to give it that little bit more of that sort of flexible bouncing. So clearly a lot of the stuff that is given you instruction wise as to how to set it up is not right. It's the 5 to 10 kilo, even though I've got 8.5 kilos on the rig, the tensions, spring tensions seem to be way too strong for that sort of use. And when I reduced the weight of this, it just transformed the thing. It was noticeable. It was hard to tell when I was out in the bush looking off the monitor, but coming home, there is a definite improvement, and I think you'll see that yourselves. It's not ideal yet for those who want to walk, but when you consider how the conditions, I was quite impressed as to how well it balanced it out. Most people won't be moving anywhere near those sort of conditions, as I noted. So I think this weekend, hopefully, I'll get a better chance to see how it works and how much more adjustment I need to do to reduce the tension on the springs. And I think that's the critical component, is that they were tensioned up too much, even for an 8.5 kilo total load. So why that is the case, I don't know. They give you spring ratings and so on. I'm going to contact Pro-Aim because of another video I made a comment about the difficulties that I've had with getting this balanced properly, and also the vest settings. And they actually left a note there to say please contact Pro-Aim about that, so that we can discuss the ability to set it and so on. So I'll do that after I put this video out and see what they say, and see how we can go about getting a better balancing with this, because there's definitely a lot of potential there. It's really, really good. It's easy to use. It keeps the weight. Even with the lower tension, I was able to lift the camera up and hold it quite easily. So there is something there that impedes the nice ability to walk with it, and I think it's just that the springs really are too heavy duty for even an 8.5 kilo load. So we'll see how we go, and I'll report back on that once I get some more information from them to see whether they agree with what I'm saying or have some other ideas. The other thing that I did was I was using the Smooth 4 gimbal the whole trip, using my phone to do the recording. I just decided to do that just to give it a real acid test and see how it would go and give a degree of consistency. I did one short video with the Pocket 4K, and it blended in reasonably well with the video from my mobile phone. But the disappointing thing was, on the very last day, I wanted to do some recording of where we were camping, in the morning that is, and this thing just didn't turn on. It just blinked, went up blue lights, and as you may have noted, I put a video up there because the seller wants to see what's wrong. I don't know what is going off with this. The error figure or the note that comes up with this seems to indicate that it's got an overload, and that's often to do with incorrect balancing. But as I noted in an earlier video, I actually did some adjustments to this with weights and so on, so that it was perfectly balanced with the mobile phone attached to it. So the same way that I do with all my other gimbals. So that wasn't the issue. So I don't know what caused it. Certainly the overload issue is a common thing apparently with the Smooth 4, as I've discovered. But this wasn't. Most people who have that problem, it happens very quickly. I've been using this since about late January, and on this trip it really got a heavy use, and it is working really nicely all the time. I especially like the fact that I could control record, stop, start with it, and do other things with it that was much more difficult to do with the other gimbal that I've got. But if this can't get fixed or replaced, and it's a common problem, I might just have to revert to an old, less functional gimbal for that sort of use. But I must say that this is really nice, and I wish that it didn't break down the way it did. But that's life. It could be a one-off, but looking at some of the internet comments and so forth on this gimbal, there is a common thread when it comes to the systems closing down, and with a little red light that appears underneath the blue lights there. So hopefully that can be resolved, and I'm not really sure what the end result will be, but again, I'll report back on that so that people have an understanding of what you might be looking at if you're looking at this sort of a gimbal. So I'll just put the video up now, and this is of the Flycam Galaxy Vest. Have a look at that, and then see how it goes and see what your views are on that, and we'll just talk a little bit after it. Okay, what I'm doing now is testing the Flycam Galaxy Vest with some new settings on the arms. The arms is the one that's been, I think, causing all the problems with balancing and so forth. And I don't think the guidelines or the instructions that come out and about are all that good. So what I've done is I've still got the 5 to 10 kilo springs in there, but I've reduced them down, especially the one furthest from the body, to a much, much lower setting to see if that will alleviate some of the bobbing. And if it does, and I'm not going to really be able to see it until I get home, but if it produces better results than it did in my first trial, that should be really encouraging. And I'm walking on some pretty rough terrain up a hill with rocks and things, so it's really going to be testing the gimbal. And just looking at the screen, it actually does look reasonably smooth. The small Duan gimbal that I've got for the phone actually works really well when you're walking, obviously because of the lighter weight. So you've got a huge advantage there. But just seeing how this goes, and I'm again on some pretty ordinary terrain here. And this is the thing I wanted to test out here to a greater degree than what I'm doing at home. Not just that I couldn't do it at home, but I think coming out here makes it more meaningful. I'm actually using it for something of purpose, just showing the surroundings of the hut area that we're at. Can't say for certain, but it does look like it's far, far more stable. And again, I'm just walking on a rocky gravel road, not smooth concrete or anything else. The vest certainly takes the weight of the camera and gimbal off. You can feel it a little bit in your back though, so I don't know if I've still got it incorrectly adjusted. It's again one of those things that I think I need to tighten the belt part of it a little bit more and readjust it. But just standing still works well, and you can still bend down with it quite nicely. Some people say that you can't do that and you have to, that's why they want to use a glide cam. I reckon this has just the same movements, and not only that, I can tilt up and down with it comes to the control, so there's no real problems with that. I have a feeling, but I can only really know when I get home whether this has actually improved the balancing. But I do have a feeling that it's looking a lot better. So you can certainly hold this sort of setup for a lot longer than what you could if you were just trying to hold it by hand with the gimbal alone. So more testing on the way. I've got a car show to do in a week or a fortnight, and I'll be using this there, so that'll be interesting to see how that works. Again, I think it could be quite good. It's on far more amenable ground to walk on, and I'm not going to be walking backwards and forwards or whatever in any case. So and the sun is extraordinarily bright here at the moment, so even at 500 nit I can still see the focus and compose with the Blackmagic monitor, so that works actually really well. So I'm just going to call it a day at that moment. I'm going to go and enjoy some drinkies and relax. Okay, that was the trial with the revised spring tensions on the Flycam Galaxy Vest. I think you'll agree that there was less bobbing around. Where there was more bobbing, that was on the climbing up sort of a fairly shallow but very rocky slope, and on some other uneven ground. So I think it's quite usable. I did try some stabilisation in Resolve with it, but didn't seem to do a great deal of difference to it, so I'm not too sure why that's the case. I tried different options with it, and I don't think it really did a great degree of justice to that. And I think it's just because it's designed to take out a different type of instability than walking around with something like this. So anyway, I think it does work better. I think there's a really good potential for it, and I'm hoping that when I contact ProAim that they can give me some guidance as to how to potentially make it work even better, because I would really like to recommend it, because in most respects it seems to be an excellent product. The only really disappointing thing I've got again to say is the belt tensioning. That could be improved. That's the hardest thing of all, is to, when you're out in the field as a solo operator, putting the vest on, I can get the top adjustments tight, the side adjustments tight, but it's the one around the waist that is the most difficult to get really tight, because it just doesn't have that sort of ability to be pulled really tight by a single user. And I think that's sort of something that should be looked at with some different modification, whatever that might be. But that's all I've got to say today about those bits and pieces. Hopefully it gives you some information. The Rode Wireless Go 2 is definitely worth it. I've got no regrets getting that whatsoever. And the Flycam Galaxy Vest, same thing. I think it's going to perform quite well with a little bit more adjustment. And disappointing with the Smooth 4 that it died in the ditch the way it did. So we'll see what happens. But on that note, I'll say cheers.